The woman's shadow fell across the dusty main street of Cheyenne, Wyoming, just as the banker slammed his door in her face. And Cole Crawford, watching from his horse 50 yards away, felt something shift in his chest, like a door that had been locked for years, finally finding its key. It was late September in 1883, and the afternoon sun cast everything in shades of amber and gold. Cole had ridden into town for supplies. Nothing more than flour and coffee and maybe some new leather for his saddle. But now he sat frozen in place, watching this stranger woman stand perfectly still on the wooden sidewalk as if gathering herself after a blow. She wore a simple gray dress that had seen better days, and her dark hair was pulled back severely from a face that, even from this distance, struck him as beautiful in a haunted sort of way. She carried a worn carpet bag in one hand and held herself with the rigid posture of someone who refused to break no matter how hard the world pushed. Cole had been ranching alone for 3 years now, ever since his parents died in the same winter that took half the cattle in the territory. 28 years old, and he had given up on most things beyond keeping his land and his remaining livestock alive. Romance seemed like something from another lifetime, something for men who had not learned that the world took away everything you dared to love. But something about the set of this woman's shoulders, the way she lifted her chin and walked to the next building, made him urge his horse forward without quite knowing why. He watched her enter the boarding house. Through the window, he could see Mrs. Henderson, the proprietor, shaking her head firmly. The conversation lasted less than a minute before the woman emerged again, her expression carefully neutral but her knuckles white where they gripped the handle of her bag. She stood on the sidewalk, looking up and down the street as if trying to decide which door to try next, which rejection to face. Cole dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post. He had no plan, no idea what he was doing, but his feet carried him across the street anyway. The woman had started walking toward the general store, her steps measured and deliberate despite what must have been crushing disappointment. He could see it now in the tight line of her mouth, the way she blinked too rapidly as if fighting back tears she refused to shed. She reached the general store just ahead of him, and he hung back, pretending to examine some farming equipment displayed outside while he watched through the window. Mr. Patterson, who had sold coal supplies for years, listened to whatever she was asking with increasingly narrowed eyes. Then he was pointing toward the door, his expression hard, and the woman was nodding and backing away, still holding onto that composure like it was the last thing she owned. When she stepped back outside, Cole was there on the sidewalk. She nearly ran into him, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Up close, he could see she was younger than he had thought, probably 24 or 25, with eyes the color of creek water and a face that would have been lovely if it were not so drawn with exhaustion and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation held carefully in check. "I beg your pardon," she said, her voice low and surprisingly refined. Eastern, he thought, or at least educated somewhere far from Wyoming's rough territories. "No harm done, miss," Cole said, and then, because he could not seem to help himself, "You looking for something specific? I know most folks in this town." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was sincere or simply toying with her. Whatever she saw in his face must have satisfied her because her shoulders dropped just slightly. "I am looking for lodging," she said, "and perhaps work if any is available. I have some money, but I need to make it last, and I need somewhere to stay while I figure out my situation." "The boarding house would not take you." Something flickered across her face. "No, nor would the banker consider my request for a small loan to tide me over, nor would the general store owner entertain the idea of hiring me, even temporarily." She said it without self-pity, just stating facts, but Cole felt anger kindle in his gut on her behalf. Why not? The question came out harsher than he intended. She smiled then, but it was a bitter thing. Because they have already heard about me, it seems, or heard about women like me. Single women traveling alone, without family or references or obvious means of support. They think I am either a criminal or something worse, and they want nothing to do with me regardless of what the truth might be. Cole found himself believing her. There was something fundamentally decent in her face, in the straightforward way she met his eyes despite her obvious exhaustion. What is the truth, then? The truth is that I was meant to marry a man in Laramie, a man my father arranged for me to wed after my mother died. When I arrived, I discovered he already had a wife and 3 children and was looking for free labor more than a spouse. I left immediately, of course, but I spent most of my remaining money on the train ticket here, thinking I could find work in a larger town. I have been a teacher and a seamstress. I can cook and keep house. I'm not afraid of hard work, but it seems my lack of connections makes me unemployable, and my status as a single woman without chaperone makes me unsuitable for respectable lodging. The whole story came out in a rush, as if she were testifying before a judge, presenting evidence for her defense. Cole believed every word. He had seen enough of the world to know that decent people often ended up in impossible situations through no fault of their own. And he had also seen enough of small-town prejudice to know that strangers, especially women alone, faced walls of suspicion that no amount of virtue could scale. "What is your name?" he asked. "Hannah," she said. "Hannah Price. Cole Crawford. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside town. Not much to speak of, but the house is solid and there is a spare room that has been empty since my mother passed. I could use help with the cooking and mending if you are willing. Room and board plus fair wages." She stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "You are offering me employment and lodging. You do not even know me. I know you have been turned away from every door on this street, despite being obviously respectable and obviously desperate. I know you could have lied to me just now, could have made up some story to make yourself sound better, but you told me the truth straight. That counts for something in my book. Mr. Crawford, I appreciate the offer, but surely you understand how inappropriate it would be for me to live unchaperoned in your home. It would ruin whatever reputation I have left, and it might damage yours as well." Cole had already thought of that, and he had an answer that surprised him even as he said it. "Then we will get married. Not a real marriage, I mean. Just on paper, just for appearances. You would have your own room and your privacy, and your reputation would be protected. I need help on the ranch, and you need a place to be. It seems like a practical solution." The words hung between them in the dusty afternoon air, and Cole could hardly believe he had spoken them. 3 years of solitude, 3 years of deliberately keeping everyone at arm's length. And here he was proposing marriage to a woman whose last name he had learned 60 seconds ago. But even as his rational mind screamed at him to take it back, to walk away, something deeper and more insistent told him this was right. This was necessary. This was the thing he had been waiting for without knowing it. Hannah's face had gone very still. "You cannot possibly mean that." "I do, though. Look, Miss Price, I am not expecting anything from you beyond honest work. I am not looking for romance or companionship beyond the ordinary. I have been alone for a long time and I have gotten used to it. But I have also gotten tired of it, if I am being honest. The house is too quiet. The days are too long, and you need help right now today before you spend another night God knows where. So why not? We can figure out the details as we go, but at least you would be safe and fed and able to catch your breath long enough to decide what you really want to do with your life." She searched his face for a long moment, and he let her look, let her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, she said, "You are either the kindest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Probably both," Cole admitted. "But the offer stands. If I accept, and I am not saying I am accepting, but if I did, there would need to be clear boundaries. Separate rooms, as you said. No expectations beyond the work I can provide. And if either of us becomes uncomfortable with the arrangement, we should be free to dissolve it. Agreed on all counts. And you would truly marry me. Legally. I would. There is a minister right here in town who knows me. We could do it today if you wanted. Or you could take some time to think about it, though I am not sure where you would stay while you think." Hannah closed her eyes briefly, and Cole saw her sway slightly on her feet. She was exhausted, he realized, not just from today but from weeks or maybe months of struggling and surviving and holding herself together through sheer will. When she opened her eyes again, they were bright with unshed tears, but her voice was steady. "Then I accept, Mr. Crawford. And I will work hard to prove your kindness was not misplaced. Call me Cole," he said, and offered his arm. She took it, and he felt the slight tremor in her hand, felt the way she leaned just a fraction of her weight against him as if her legs might not hold her much longer. "Let us go find Reverend Thomas before you fall over." The wedding took place in the small church on the edge of town, with Reverend Thomas and his wife serving as witnesses. The Reverend asked if Cole was certain, asked if he understood the seriousness of the commitment. And Cole said yes, even though he was not certain of anything except that letting Hannah walk away would be wrong in a way he could not articulate. Hannah answered her vows in a clear voice that only shook once, when the Reverend pronounced them man and wife. Cole did not kiss her. It seemed presumptuous given the circumstances. Instead, he shook her hand solemnly, and she gave him a small, tremulous smile that made his chest ache. They stopped at the general store for her to wait outside while Cole purchased supplies. Mr. Patterson's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline when Cole mentioned he had just gotten married. But Cole did not elaborate, just paid for his goods and loaded them onto his horse. He helped Hannah up onto the saddle and swung up behind her, and they rode out of Cheyenne as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The ranch appeared as they crested a low rise, a simple wooden house with a barn and several outbuildings scattered across land that rolled away toward distant peaks. It was not much, Cole knew, especially compared to the eastern life Hannah must have known, but it was honest land, good land, land that could support a life if you were willing to work for it. "It is beautiful," Hannah said softly, and Cole felt something in him relax that he had not known was tense. "It needs work," he admitted. "I have been letting things slide since my parents died, just doing enough to get by, but the bones of it are good." He helped her down from the horse and led her inside. The house was clean enough, he kept it tidy, but it was spare and masculine with none of the touches his mother had once provided. Hannah stood in the main room, taking it in with an expression he could not read. "The kitchen is through there," Cole said, pointing. "Bedroom down that hall, that was my parents' room, that is mine now. The room next to it was my mother's sewing room, but it has a bed and a window. That would be yours if that is acceptable." "More than acceptable," Hannah said. She set down her carpet bag, and Cole saw her shoulders finally, truly relax. "Mr. Crawford, Cole, I do not have the words to thank you properly. You have saved my life today, I think, or at least saved me from a very dark path I did not want to walk." "You would have figured something out," Cole said, uncomfortable with the gratitude in her voice. "You seem like the sort who always does. Perhaps, but I am glad I did not have to find out." She looked around the room again. "Should I start dinner?" "It is getting late, and you must be hungry after the day we have had." They fell into an awkward domesticity. Cole showing her where things were kept, Hannah taking inventory of the pantry and planning a meal from what she found. Cole went out to tend to his horse and check on the cattle, giving her space and giving himself time to process what he had done. Married. To a stranger. It seemed insane when he thought about it directly, and yet it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right since his parents died. When he came back inside, the smell of cooking meat and fresh bread greeted him, and something in his chest twisted. The house smelled alive again, smelled like home instead of just a place where he slept between workdays. Hannah had found his mother's apron and tied it around her waist, and she moved around the kitchen with efficient grace, clearly comfortable in the role despite the strangeness of the situation. They ate in near silence, both too tired and too overwhelmed for much conversation. But it was not an uncomfortable silence. Cole watched Hannah eat with the focus of someone who had perhaps not had a proper meal in days, and he made sure to pass her seconds without comment. When the meal was done, she insisted on cleaning up despite her obvious exhaustion, and Cole helped her, showing her his system for washing and drying and putting away. "You keep a tidy house for a bachelor," Hannah observed. "My mother trained me well." She said there was no excuse for living like an animal just because you were out on the frontier. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. You would have liked her, I think, and she would have liked you. It was a strange thing to say to a woman he had known for mere hours, but Hannah smiled at him, and the smile reached her eyes this time. "I hope I can live up to that." Cole showed her to her room, which suddenly seemed very small and very bare in the lamplight. "I will get you more blankets," he said. "Nights get cold out here, even in autumn, and I will see about getting some curtains made, give you more privacy." "Cole," Hannah said, touching his arm, "this is more than enough. This is more than I could have dreamed of this morning when I got off the train. Please do not worry about what I am lacking. I am grateful for what I have." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Her hand on his arm felt warm even through his shirt sleeve, and he was suddenly very aware that she was his wife, legally his wife, and that they were standing very close together in a small room with a bed between them and the rest of the world. But he had made a promise, and Cole Crawford kept his promises. "Good night, then," he said, stepping back. "If you need anything, I am just in the next room." "Good night, Cole, and thank you. Again." He closed her door and stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to her move around the room, hearing the creak of the bed as she sat down. Then he went to his own room and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering what he had started, and whether he would come to regret it, and why the thought of her being so close by made him feel more alive than he had felt in 3 years of solitude. The next morning, Cole woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and for a disorienting moment he thought his mother was still alive, that the last 3 years had been nothing but a nightmare. Then reality reasserted itself, and he remembered. Hannah, his wife. He dressed quickly and went to the kitchen, where she stood at the stove with her dark hair braided down her back, still wearing the gray dress from yesterday, but somehow looking more rested, more solid, as if a single night of real sleep had begun to restore her. "Good morning," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "I hope you do not mind that I started breakfast. I have always been an early riser, and I thought I might as well make myself useful." "I do not mind at all," Cole said, accepting the cup of coffee she poured for him. "You did not have to start working immediately, though. You could have taken a day to rest." "I am fine," she said firmly, "and I would rather be busy. It helps me not to think too much." Cole understood that. He had spent 3 years staying busy for exactly the same reason. They ate breakfast together, and then Hannah insisted on cleaning the kitchen while Cole went out to work. He spent the morning mending fences and checking on the cattle, work that normally would have taken him all day because he would stretch it out, taking his time because there was nothing else to fill his hours. But today, he found himself working faster, more efficiently, eager to get back to the house to check on Hannah, to make sure she was settling in all right. When he returned at midday, he found her in the main room with a needle and thread, mending a pile of his shirts that he had been meaning to fix for months. She had also swept the floors and opened the windows to air the place out, and the whole house felt different, lighter somehow, as if her presence had physically changed the space. "You did not have to do all this," Cole said. "I wanted to earn my keep," Hannah replied, biting off a thread. "You have given me so much, Cole. The least I can do is make your life a little easier." "You are not a servant, Hannah. You are my wife." The word hung between them, strange and weighty. Hannah set down her sewing and looked at him directly. "What am I to you, really?" "I have been thinking about it all morning, trying to understand this arrangement. You have been so kind, but I do not understand why. What do you get out of this?" Cole sat down across from her, trying to find the right words. "Honestly, I am not entirely sure. But I had stopped living after my parents died. I was just existing, just going through the motions. And then I saw you yesterday, saw you being turned away and refusing to give up, and something in me recognized something in you. I thought maybe we could help each other. Maybe I could give you safety and stability, and maybe you could give me a reason to care about something again." Hannah's eyes were very bright. "That is the most honest thing anyone has said to me in a very long time. I figure we have built this on honesty so far. Might as well keep doing that." "All right then. Honest question. Do you ever regret what you did yesterday? When you wake up or when you look at me, do you wish you had just ridden past and left me to figure out my own problems?" "No," Cole said, and he meant it absolutely. "Not once. Not even for a second." "Do you regret accepting?" "No," Hannah said. "I am terrified about what this all means and where it might lead, but I do not regret it. You have given me a chance to breathe, Cole, to figure out who I am when I am not just surviving. That is a gift I cannot repay." "You already are repaying it," Cole said, gesturing around the room. "The house already feels more like a home than it has in years. That is more than I could have hoped for." They looked at each other across the small space, and Cole felt something shift between them, some subtle deepening of their connection. They were not strangers anymore, not quite. They were two people trying to build something new from the wreckage of their separate pasts, and maybe, just maybe, it might work. The days fell into a rhythm. Cole worked the ranch, and Hannah worked the house, and in the evenings they would eat dinner together and talk. At first, the conversations were tentative, careful, both of them testing the boundaries of what they could share. But gradually, they opened up. Hannah told him about her childhood in Philadelphia, her father's strictness, her mother's gentle defection from the world's expectations. She told him about teaching school before her mother died, about the joy she had found in helping children learn to read, in watching their faces light up with understanding. Cole told her about growing up on the ranch, about his parents' love for the land and for each other, about the brutal winter that had taken them both within weeks of each other. He told her about the loneliness that had followed, the way he had cut himself off from the world because it was easier than risking more loss. "But you risked loss when you married me," Hannah pointed out one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "You let me in. You opened your door." "I know," Cole said. "I have been thinking about that. I think maybe I was tired of being safe. Safe is just another word for half dead, turns out." Hannah laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face. "I like that. I am going to remember that." As autumn deepened into the first hints of winter, they grew more comfortable with each other. Hannah proved to be an excellent cook. better than Cole could have imagined, and she had a gift for making the house feel warm and welcoming. She started a garden for the following spring, planning out where she would plant vegetables and herbs, and Cole found himself looking forward to seeing her vision come to life. He taught her to ride his gentler horse so she could come with him sometimes when he checked the cattle, and she proved to be a quick learner, fearless in the saddle. They were becoming friends. Cole realized one day in late October as they worked together to bring in firewood for the coming winter. Real friends, the kind who could work side by side in comfortable silence or talk for hours about nothing in particular. It was more than he had expected, more than he had let himself hope for. But it was also becoming complicated, because he was also becoming aware that his feelings for Hannah were developing into something beyond friendship, something he had promised himself he would not let happen. She was beautiful, that was undeniable, but it was more than that. She was strong and capable and funny when she let herself be. She was kind to the ranch animals, gentle with the barn cats and patient with his temperamental horse. She sang sometimes while she worked, old songs he half remembered from his childhood, and the sound made the house feel full in a way it never had before. And there were moments, brief flashes, when he would catch her looking at him with an expression he could not quite read, something soft and wondering, and his heart would stutter in his chest. But he had made a promise. Separate rooms, no expectations, the freedom to leave if she wanted. He would not trap her into something she had not agreed to, would not take advantage of her gratitude or her dependence on him. So he kept his distance, kept his feelings locked down tight, and tried to be satisfied with the friendship they had built. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that transformed the ranch into something magical. Hannah stood on the porch in the early morning, wrapped in one of his mother's old shawls, watching the sun rise over the white landscape with an expression of such pure joy that Cole had to turn away before he did something stupid like pull her into his arms. "It is so beautiful," she breathed. "I have never seen anything like this. It will be less beautiful when it is 3 feet deep and we are stuck inside for weeks," Cole said, but he could not help smiling at her enthusiasm. "Even then," Hannah insisted, "even then it will be beautiful in its own way." As the weather turned colder, they spent more time inside together. Hannah taught herself to play his mother's old piano, practicing in the evenings until she could coax out simple melodies. Cole taught her to play cards, and they had long games of poker that often ended in laughter when Hannah's expressive face gave away her hands. They read books from his parents' small library, sometimes aloud to each other, and debated the stories afterward. It was domestic and peaceful, and everything Cole had not known he wanted. But it was also torture, because every day he fell a little more in love with his wife who was not really his wife. And every day he had to pretend that nothing had changed, that he was still just offering her shelter and nothing more. Then came the day in mid-November when Hannah cut her hand badly while chopping vegetables. Cole heard her cry out and rushed inside to find her standing at the counter, blood dripping from a gash across her palm. Without thinking, he grabbed a clean cloth and pressed it to the wound, wrapping his other arm around her to steady her as she swayed. "It is all right," he murmured, holding the cloth tight. "You are all right, just breathe." Hannah leaned back against him, and Cole felt the length of her body against his, felt her trembling with pain and shock. He wanted to hold her forever. He wanted to lift her into his arms and carry her to bed and tend to her until she was healed. He wanted to kiss her forehead and her cheeks and her lips and tell her that she meant more to him than anything else in the world. Instead, he carefully wrapped her hand, making sure the bleeding had stopped, and then stepped back to give her space. "You should sit down," he said, his voice rough. I will finish dinner. Cole, Hannah said, and there was something in her voice that made him freeze. Cole, look at me. He made himself meet her eyes. She was pale from the shock, but her gaze was steady and searching. Thank you, she said, for taking care of me. You are always taking care of me. It is nothing, Cole said. Anyone would do the same. No, Hannah said firmly. They would not. Most people would have ridden past me that day in town. Most people would not have opened their door or their life the way you have. You are not just anyone, Cole Crawford. You are someone special, and I think you need to know that. Cole felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Hannah, I know what we agreed, she said, still holding his gaze. I know this was supposed to be just practical, just a business arrangement. But I think it has become something more, at least for me. And I need to know if it has become something more for you too, or if I am imagining things. The question hung in the air between them, and Cole knew this was the moment where everything would change, where he had to decide whether to be honest or to keep hiding behind the safety of their arrangement. He thought about his promise, about giving her the freedom to choose. But maybe the greatest freedom he could give her was the truth. It has become more, he said quietly. It became more for me weeks ago, maybe even that first day. I have been falling in love with you, Hannah, and I have been trying so hard not to because I did not want to trap you or pressure you or make you feel obligated. But yes, it is more. You are more. You are everything. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling, a smile so bright and genuine it made his chest ache. Oh, thank God, she said. I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was alone in feeling this way. You are not alone, Cole said. You are not alone in anything, not anymore. She stepped toward him, closing the distance between them, and Cole met her halfway. When he kissed her, finally kissed her, it felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something he had not known he was looking for. She kissed him back with a fierceness that surprised him, her good hand fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. They stood in the kitchen kissing until they were both breathless, until Cole felt like his heart might beat right out of his chest. When they finally broke apart, Hannah laughed, a little wild, a little giddy. I have wanted to do that for weeks. So have I, Cole admitted. I have been driving myself crazy trying not to. Well, stop trying, Hannah said. Stop holding back. If we are going to do this, let us really do it. Let us be married in truth, not just on paper. Are you sure? Cole needed to ask, needed to give her one more chance to back away. You do not have to do this just because I said I love you. You do not owe me anything. I am not doing this out of obligation, Hannah said firmly. I am doing this because I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when you offered me your arm like I was someone worth protecting. I kept falling every day after that, watching you work, listening to you talk, learning who you are underneath the loneliness you wear like armor. You are a good man, Cole Crawford. You are the best man I have ever known, and I want to be your wife in every way that matters. Cole kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. Then you will be, he promised, starting right now. That night, Hannah moved her things into his room and they began their marriage in truth. Cole was gentle with her, careful of her injured hand, careful of her in every way. She was both bold and shy, curious and hesitant, and he loved every moment of discovering her, of being discovered in turn. Afterward, they lay tangled together in his bed, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing through her loose hair, and Cole felt a peace he had not known since before his parents died. Maybe longer, maybe ever. I cannot believe this is real, Hannah murmured. I keep thinking I will wake up and be back on that street in Cheyenne, being turned away from every door. It is real, Cole said, and you will never be turned away again. This door is yours now. This home is yours. I am yours if you want me. "I want you," Hannah said, tilting her head up to kiss his jaw. "I want all of this. I want the life we are building together. I want forever." "Then forever it is," Cole promised, and he meant it with everything in him. The winter that followed was hard, as Wyoming winters always were, but it was also the happiest time of Cole's life. He and Hannah were truly married now, in every sense, and the difference was transformative. They worked together during the day and held each other through the long, cold nights. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories, each other's dreams. Hannah told him she wanted to teach again someday, maybe start a small school on the ranch for the children of neighboring homesteaders. Cole encouraged her, started planning where they could build a schoolhouse when spring came. They made love often, discovering each other with growing confidence and joy. Hannah was passionate and playful in bed, surprising Cole with her boldness once she got over her initial shyness. She made him laugh, something he had not done much of in years, and she made him feel young again, feel like the world was full of possibilities instead of just hardships to endure. In December, they traveled into Cheyenne for supplies and to attend the Christmas service at the church. People stared at them, clearly curious about Cole's sudden marriage to the mysterious stranger. But Hannah held her head high, and Cole kept her close to his side, making it clear through his posture alone that anyone who wanted to gossip about his wife would have to answer to him. Reverend Thomas and his wife were warm and welcoming, genuinely happy to see that the unusual marriage had apparently worked out, and they invited Cole and Hannah for Christmas dinner. "It is nice to have friends," Hannah said on the ride home, snuggled against Cole's side for warmth. "I had forgotten what that was like." "We can have more than friends," Cole said. "We can have a community if you want. I know I have been keeping to myself for years, but that does not mean we have to keep doing that. We can build relationships, have people over, be part of the town." "I would like that," Hannah said, "but only if you would. I do not want to push you into something you are not ready for." "I am ready," Cole said. "You have helped me be ready. You have helped me want to live again instead of just survive." Christmas Day at the Reverend's house was lovely, filled with good food and warm conversation. There were other couples there, ranchers and townspeople Cole knew by sight but had never really befriended. Hannah charmed everyone with her intelligence and her genuine interest in their lives, and Cole found himself relaxing, enjoying the company, feeling like he was part of something larger than just his own small world. On the ride home through the snowy landscape, Hannah said, "That was wonderful. Can we do that again sometime? Have people to our house, I mean." "Absolutely," Cole said. "In fact, why do not we host a New Year's dinner? Invite the Reverend and his wife and some of the neighboring ranchers. Show off your cooking." Hannah laughed and kissed his cheek. "I love how you think I am such a great cook. You have very low standards, my love." "I have excellent standards," Cole corrected, "and you meet all of them." The New Year's dinner was a success, their small house filled with laughter and conversation, and the smell of Hannah's roasted chicken and fresh bread. Cole watched his wife move among their guests, pouring coffee and telling stories, and felt a rush of pride and love so intense it almost hurt. This was his life now. This was what he had built from the moment he had decided to ride across that street in Cheyenne instead of minding his own business. And it was better than anything he could have imagined. As winter gave way to early spring, Hannah began to feel unwell in the mornings. At first, she dismissed it as something she ate, but as the weeks passed and the sickness continued, Cole began to suspect the truth. When he suggested she might be pregnant, Hannah's eyes went wide with wonder and fear. "I had not even thought," she admitted, "but you might be right." "Oh, Cole." A baby. They rode into town to see the doctor, who confirmed what they had both begun to believe. Hannah was nearly 3 months pregnant, due sometime in late summer. Cole felt like his heart might explode with joy. A baby. His and Hannah's baby. A new life built from their love. Hannah cried when they left the doctor's office, but they were happy tears. "I never thought I would have this," she said. "A real marriage, a real home, a baby. When I was standing on that street last September, I thought my life was over, and now look at everything I have." "We have," Cole corrected, pulling her close. "Everything we have." The pregnancy was not easy. Hannah was sick often, and as the weather warmed and she grew larger, she struggled with the heat and the physical demands of carrying a child. But she never complained, and Cole did everything he could to make her comfortable. He took over more of the housework, insisted she rest in the afternoons, brought her cold water and cool cloths when the heat became oppressive. In May, they broke ground on the schoolhouse. Several neighboring ranchers had heard about Hannah's plan and were enthusiastic about having a proper school nearby for their children. They volunteered labor and materials, and within weeks, the small building began to take shape at the edge of Cole's property. Hannah visited the construction site daily, even in her condition, planning where the desks would go, what books she would need, how she would structure the lessons. "You are going to be an amazing teacher," Cole told her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Hannah's hand rested on her swollen belly, and Cole's hand covered hers, feeling the baby move beneath their palms. "I hope so," Hannah said. "I want to give these children what I had, what my mother gave me, a love of learning. A sense that the world is bigger than this one place, that they can be anything they want to be." "They will be lucky to have you," Cole said, leaning over to kiss her temple. "Just like I am lucky to have you." "We are lucky to have each other," Hannah corrected. "I never forget that, Cole." Not for a single day. In late August, on a sweltering afternoon, Hannah went into labor. Cole rode hell-bent for the doctor, nearly killing his horse in his panic, and returned to find his wife pacing the bedroom, breathing through contractions with the help of Mrs. Thomas, the Reverend's wife, who had come to stay with them as Hannah's due date approached. The labor was long and difficult. Cole stayed by Hannah's side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, feeling helpless and terrified as she struggled to bring their child into the world. But Hannah was strong, stronger than he had ever imagined. And when the sun set and then rose again, she finally delivered a healthy baby boy. Cole held his son for the first time with shaking hands, staring down at the tiny red face and feeling like his heart might crack open from the intensity of his love. "He is perfect," he whispered. "He is," Hannah agreed, exhausted but smiling. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for weeks but had never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Cole knew exactly what he wanted to call him. "Connor," he said. "Connor Thomas Crawford, after your father and the Reverend who married us." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. My father would have been so proud to have a grandson named after him, and the Reverend will be touched." Connor proved to be a loud baby, demanding and energetic, keeping both his parents up at all hours. But neither Cole nor Hannah minded. They took turns walking him, soothing him, marveling at his tiny fingers and his serious expressions. Cole had never thought he could love anything as much as he loved Hannah, but his son came close, a different kind of love but equally fierce. The schoolhouse opened in September, exactly a year after Cole had first seen Hannah on that street in Cheyenne. 8 children attended the first day, ranging in age from 6 to 12, and Hannah taught them with a joy that radiated from her. Cole would sometimes ride by during the day, just to watch through the window as his wife taught reading and arithmetic, her face animated, her voice clear and patient. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, Connor sleeping in his cradle nearby, and talk about their days. Hannah would tell him about her students' progress, about the little triumphs and challenges of teaching. Cole would tell her about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd now that they had more help, about the future he saw stretching out before them. "You ever miss your old life?" Cole asked her one evening as autumn began to color the trees. "Your life in Philadelphia before everything changed." Hannah considered the question seriously. "I miss my mother," she said. "I will always miss her, but the life itself, no. That life was constrained, limited by my father's expectations and society's rules. This life is hard, but it is mine. It is ours. I get to choose what I do each day. I get to be a teacher and a mother and a wife. I get to be myself in a way I never could before. So no, I do not miss the old life. I am grateful for the new one. Even though it started with you being rejected and turned away, especially because of that," Hannah said. "If those people had not turned me away, I would never have ended up here. I would never have met you. So in a strange way, I am grateful to them. They forced me to keep walking until I found the right door." "Our door," Cole said. "Our door," Hannah agreed, smiling at him. "The one that opened and never closed again." As Connor grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Cole expanded his herd with Hannah's enthusiastic support, and they hired a ranch hand to help with the increased workload. The schoolhouse thrived, with more children attending each term, and Hannah's reputation as a teacher spread throughout the county. They hosted dinners and attended church, and became true members of the Cheyenne community in a way Cole had never been before. Hannah got pregnant again when Connor was 2 years old, and this time the pregnancy was easier. She taught through most of it, only stopping when she was in her 8th month and too large to move comfortably. In the spring of 1886, she delivered a daughter, and Cole wept openly as he held his baby girl for the first time. "What should we name her?" Hannah asked, looking radiant despite her exhaustion. "Hope," Cole said, "because that is what you gave me when I saw you that day. Hope for a different life, a better life. Hope for love." "Hope Catherine Crawford," Hannah said, adding her mother's name. "It is perfect." Their life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. Connor was energetic and curious, following his father around the ranch and asking endless questions about the cattle and the horses and everything else he encountered. Hope was a quieter baby, content to watch the world with her mother's creek water eyes, smiling easily and sleeping well. Cole could not remember ever being happier or more grateful. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, Cole gave Hannah a gift he had been working on for months. He had expanded her schoolhouse, adding a library room filled with books he had ordered from catalogs and purchased on trips to larger towns. When he brought her to see it, blindfolded, and finally let her look, she burst into tears. "Cole, this must have cost a fortune," she said, running her hands over the book spines. "How did you afford all this?" "We had a good year," Cole said. "And I wanted to give you something that mattered, something that would help you do the work you love. You have given me so much, Hannah. Let me give you this." She kissed him there in the library, surrounded by books, and whispered against his lips, "You have already given me everything that matters, but I love this. I love you. I love our life together." "So do I," Cole said. "Every single part of it." The years continued to pass, marked by small joys and occasional hardships. There were droughts that tested the ranch and harsh winters that killed cattle. There were illnesses that scared them and accidents that reminded them how fragile life could be. But there was also growth and prosperity and love. So much love it seemed to fill every corner of their lives. Connor grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch and animals, who wanted to be just like his father. Hope grew into a bright, curious child who loved books and learning, who sat in on her mother's classes and absorbed everything she heard. When Hope was 4, Hannah had another baby, a second son they named Henry, and 2 years after that, twin girls arrived, to everyone's surprise and delight. They named them Grace and Joy, and the house that had once been so silent and empty was now constantly filled with noise and laughter, and the chaos of children. Cole sometimes stood on his porch in the evenings, watching Hannah corral their 5 children for dinner or bedtime, and marveled at how completely his life had changed. He was 40 years old now, weathered by work and sun, but happier than he had ever imagined possible. His ranch was successful, his children were healthy, and his wife was the center of everything good in his world. "What are you thinking?" Hannah asked one evening, coming to stand beside him on the porch. The children were finally in bed, and they had a rare moment of quiet together. "Just remembering," Cole said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Remembering the day I saw you on that street, being turned away. Remembering deciding to cross over to you instead of riding past. Best decision you ever made," Hannah teased. "Best decision I ever made," Cole confirmed. Though it hardly felt like a decision at the time, it felt more like inevitability, like I was just doing what I was always meant to do. "I felt the same when I accepted your proposal," Hannah said. "It was terrifying and insane, but it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. Like I was finally where I belonged." "You are where you belong," Cole said, kissing the top of her head. "Right here, with me and the children, building this life." "Until death do us part," Hannah said, echoing the vows they had spoken so long ago in the little church. "Even then," Cole said. "Even then, I will find you again. In whatever comes after, I will find you." Hannah tilted her face up, and he kissed her as the sun set over the ranch, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. They stood there together, 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who had built a life from nothing but faith and determination and love. Behind them, inside the house, their children slept safely in their beds. Around them, the ranch spread out in all directions, prosperous and peaceful. And ahead of them lay more years together, years of work and joy and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Cole had opened his door to a desperate stranger on a dusty street in Wyoming, and she had walked through it and transformed everything. She had turned his house into a home, his existence into a life, his isolation into love. And he had never let that door close again, not for a single moment, not for anything in the world. They grew old together, Cole and Hannah, their children growing up and starting lives of their own. Connor took over the ranch, running it with the same dedication his father had shown. Hope became a teacher like her mother, opening a school in Cheyenne proper. Henry became a veterinarian, traveling between ranches to care for animals. Grace married a lawyer and moved to Denver, writing long letters home. Joy surprised everyone by becoming a newspaper reporter, documenting the changing West with sharp prose and compassion. Cole and Hannah became grandparents, then great-grandparents, their house still the heart of the family, still the place everyone returned to for holidays and celebrations. Hannah kept teaching until she was 70, finally retiring only because her eyesight began to fail. Cole worked the ranch until he was 75, finally letting Connor take over completely when his joints protested too loudly. They sat together on their porch in the evenings, the same porch where they had spent so many hours over the decades, holding hands and watching sunsets and remembering. Sometimes they talked, sharing old stories or making plans for visiting various children. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from a lifetime of knowing another person completely. "You have any regrets?" Cole asked one evening when they were both in their 80s. His hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were still sharp and clear when he looked at his wife. Hannah, her own dark hair now silver, her face soft with age, smiled at him. "Not a single one," she said. "This life we built, it has been everything I could have wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible. What about you? My only regret is that I wasted 3 years after my parents died," Cole said. 3 years I could have been living instead of just surviving. But then again, if I had not had those years, maybe I would not have recognized you when I saw you. Maybe I would not have known to stop, to reach out, to open that door. Everything happened exactly as it needed to, Hannah said with the certainty of deep faith. We found each other at the right time in the right place. It was meant to be. Meant to be, Cole agreed, bringing her hand to his lips. From that first moment until this one and every moment after. They sat together as the sun set, two old people who had loved each other well, who had built a legacy of family and community and kindness. The ranch still thrived under Connor's care. The schoolhouse Hannah had started still operated, now run by Hope's daughter. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren spread across Wyoming and beyond, all carrying pieces of the love story that had started on a dusty street in Cheyenne so many years ago. Cole died first, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 87, with Hannah holding his hand. She grieved him deeply but not desperately, secure in the knowledge that they had loved each other fully, completely, with no words left unsaid, no time wasted. She lived 3 more years, spending them with her children and grandchildren, telling stories about Cole, about their life together, about the miracle of that September day when rejection had led her to exactly where she needed to be. When Hannah died at 90, her family buried her next to Cole on a hillside overlooking the ranch. Her gravestone read, "Hannah Price Crawford, beloved wife, mother, teacher, and friend. She walked through an open door and found home." Cole's stone, placed years earlier, read, "Cole Crawford, beloved husband, father, and rancher. He opened the door and never let it close." Their great-great-grandchildren would play on that ranch someday, never knowing directly the two people who had started it all, but benefiting from the foundation of love they had laid. The story would be told and retold, embellished and simplified, but the essential truth would remain. Two lonely people had found each other in the least likely of circumstances, and they had chosen each other, had chosen love, had chosen to build something beautiful from nothing but faith and determination. And in a small town in Wyoming, on quiet evenings when the wind blew right, people swore they could still hear laughter from the Crawford ranch, still see two figures sitting on that old porch, holding hands and watching the sunset together. Because some loves are so strong they echo through time, leaving imprints on the world that never quite fade away. The door Cole Crawford opened that September day in 1883 never truly closed. It remained open for generations, welcoming family and friends, offering shelter and love and hope to anyone who needed it. And that, in the end, was the greatest legacy of all. Not the successful ranch or the thriving school or the large family, but the simple act of opening a door to someone in need and choosing to keep it open, choosing to let love in, choosing to build a life together one day at a time until the days added up to a lifetime of joy.